Hello, this is the podcast host version of George checking in one last time for the Patreon bonus intro. If you're hearing this, it's because Best Little Horror House in Philly has ended, and I'm releasing the Patreon bonus episodes into the wild. These episodes only exist thanks to the very generous support of some listeners over the years, and I encourage you all to consider supporting an independent podcast this way, or independent art in general. As I mentioned, these episodes are coming from all over the podcast timeline. You'll hear the old intro sometimes, which is kind of a yardstick, but generally I am mentioning this because it means that they will have varying levels of audio quality. As I got better at hosting, so too did the technical aspects. While I certainly wish all the episodes were of the same standard that it reached near the end, I can't go back in time, and I felt it was better to release them this way than not at all, so I hope you enjoy.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh. I'm getting ready to watch a video.
You making popcorn?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite?
I don't know.
You have to have a favorite. Talk to me. Talk to me.
Hi everybody, I'm George and welcome to the conclusion of our very special third annual Plutember subtitle, All Georgie Picks. Today it's JP's turn in the hot seat again. What up, pal?
What is up, George? This is really exciting. It's so good to get away from Reegs and just do our own thing, you know?
That's right, just the two additional hosts, getting a time to shine.
No, it's great. It seems like this month has been going pretty well. Some great movies being watched and discussed here. So really
That's
excited.
right. The Georgie Picks are going well. It is less of a hot seat than usual because we did shake things up. All the movies we're doing are movies that I felt wouldn't get picked without your old pal Georgie putting his finger on the scale. And today the scale reads The Amusement Park from George Romero.
George, I'm going to have to say, I think you're right about this may not have been picked by somebody else if you had not forced the issue.
That's right. It's a 1975 oddity that was released in 2020 for the first time. It's, first of all, very, very regional.
Mm-hmm.
Big Yinzer energy coming off of this one. It's only like 55 minutes. It's between 50 minutes and an hour. So it's a short movie. And it's highly, highly underseen because it was this strange footnote on George Romero's career. Coming to light was even itself only kind of a blip on a lot of people's radars. But since I chose this one, let's talk about what you knew going in. Had you seen the movie? Had you heard of it? Are you generally a George Romero fan?
Let's start with that. I'm a big George Romero fan. I think that his body of work, while it's not always the most palatable, I don't think it's as mainstream as some other directors. I think he did important things. He defined a genre and then redefined it again and again with his Of the Dead series. I generally love his films and get really excited to see any of them. I had not heard of this until you brought it to my attention, and I think there's some really good reasons for that. It being a lost film, but also it's exclusively on Shudder, at least for now, and I don't see them promoting it very much either. So it was a little more under the radar than I'm used to. So I didn't come in with any expectations other than it was a Romero film. It was an earlier Romero film, and and I'm sure you'll get into it, but it's production origins, not quite what I was expecting, or really, I wouldn't have been on my radar. But it's a cool story of where it was, why it was, and what he did here.
For me, as respected as George Romero is, it's not enough. I think that he's one of America's finest directors, personally. His movies, packed full of biting and smart commentary, but they don't sacrifice entertainment either. I find them all to be incredibly watchable. Forget that he basically invented the zombie movie. Mm-hmm. Forget the perfect trilogy whose individual entries could each easily be the actual best horror movie ever made. Even putting that to the side, all the other stuff rocks, in my opinion. I love The Crazies. I even love Bruiser. Peter Stormare just came up in the last episode for Constantine. And in a career built on wild performances, Bruiser might be his most wild performance.
God, he's so good in everything, too. You gotta love him.
Yeah, Stormare rocks. And so, let's talk a little bit about where the production of this movie comes from. The amusement park would definitely be considered a work-for-hire job. one of the few movies that he directed but didn't write himself. And it's sort of designed as just this call to action to say, hey, be nice to the elderly.
Yep.
Although I think George did a great job of applying some intersectionality of sexism, racism, and classism in there as well.
Yes, he did, including especially in casting. They make a note at the top of the film, but he cast people from low income, from oppressed societies. He cast people who are just neglected. Most of the cast in this, or I guess, I mean, it's the cast, but there's not really featured characters a lot. But they're everyone, we're talking like 65 plus, not professional actors, and people who, as they note, some of them, this was some of the only social interaction they'd had in years, and it was one of the best days just to be paid attention to.
Right. Yeah, to get to be part of the movie.
Yeah.
It came about because their production company, The Latent Image, had a big staff because George just loved the community. They had about 20 people on staff with projectionists and a full-time grip, which you don't need full-time electrics guy when you're a little production company. And because of this, the company was on the verge of bankruptcy. And so they didn't really have a choice as far as taking the job. But Romero did at least enjoy the script. The writer was Walton Cook, who'd previously worked with George on The Crazies as the fire chief. And he, along with Michael Gornick, actually worked with the Lutheran Services Society on a short documentary titled Journey to Mars, because they had a facility in Mars, Pennsylvania. That had a similar theme regarding the abuse and even simple disinterest in our aging population. And they wanted to expand on it, heard about Romero thanks to his work on Night of the Living Dead and their impending premiere of The Crazies, and the rest is history. Now, largely because of funding reasons, many of the crew is also on screen in the movie. Bill Heinzman was the cemetery zombie in Night of the Living Dead. He's also the ticket taker in this movie, but he's mostly George's cinematographer.
That's wild. And not to interrupt, but I love that about Romero. He had people that he stuck with film after film after film, and building that kind of like family community where he's making his pictures. It's wonderful to see that.
Definitely. And I think that was something that came up time and time again in the behind the scenes stuff, was people just talking about what a community feeling he had on set and that feeling of family. And I think that part of that is just working regularly in an area that's not LA, right? When you're working in a smaller market like Pittsburgh, you sort of get to know some of the similar faces and work with the repertory crew. And I think that familiarity can lead to some really interesting benefits in terms of knowing how to push them, how to get the best performance out of them in a way that doesn't necessarily happen when you're going through the cattle mill of casting, right?
And you see it on the screen here. And again, nobody's winning an Oscar from this, but, mostly because it wasn't released. But you see, he's able to get performances out of people. And in this one, especially, very real, very raw, and very weird performances, very deliberate and just good. Just you never felt like you were watching amateurs.
Yeah. You have, Bill Heinzman as the ticket taker. His wife, Bonnie, was the script supervisor, as well as the woman half of the Young Lovers. And Michael Gornick, assistant cameraman and sound guy, was the man half of the Young Lovers.
Okay.
Or one real actor was Lincoln Maisel, a working actor in the area who would later go on to co-star in Martin as well, which is another great Romero movie that I am a big fan of.
He's solid. He's an anchor. I mean, he is you follow him the whole way, but you see him also at the top and the bottom of the film, and he's just got a real presence.
Definitely. And as you said earlier, as far as the crowd goes, it was just volunteers, mostly those involved in the services to the elderly or the elderly themselves in low-income areas who most directly needed the support. And I do think that it's really impressively acted, and sort of a testament to Romero's directing that he got this out of a bunch of amateurs. Yeah. That he's able to sort of leverage that to create the surrealism, utilize something that could very easily be a flaw, and use it to instead bolster the movie.
Absolutely, really well said. I mean, that it is the non-professional, I should say, non-professional. The acting, every one of them comes across in a way where it does feel real, and it doesn't feel like they were handed a line and they felt awkward about it. Like people are acting in ways that you are seeing real, raw, honest emotion.
Absolutely. They had 3 days to shoot at the Westview Amusement Park, which folded not long after they filmed there. Owners knew that the writing was on the wall and said, if it revives interest in the park, great. If not, might as well get a win-win in here, since they actually want it to be kind of dilapidated. So
Yeah.
it worked out okay.
Mission accomplished.
Yep. So they'd set up at 5 a.m. and then shoot until 7 p.m. Very funny in the commentary when Gornick talks about the crowd being extras and how he actually married a woman he met in the production team. And now looking at some of these shots, he sees a ton of his in-laws just milling around. He's like, oh, there's my cousin and my grandmother. And look.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. They said it was a very chill shoot despite the long hours. Lincoln himself was a workhorse. They said that he had no problem. And of course, this is before SAG for all of these people. So, the union hours didn't apply. So, they said they were happy to work from 5 to 7. They were shocked there was no rain problems. It is definitely an overcast area, so
yeah,
worked out okay. One thing I also really want to mention before we started to talk about the plot is that this was shot way before Steadicam. They didn't have anything in the way of stabilization. And so this movie is basically all handheld. And when you see some of the swinging shots from on and under the rides, and you realize that Heinzman had to make that motion and keep it smooth himself, it's really incredibly impressive to be in these precarious positions, keep your head literally and figuratively, and be able to operate the camera like that. I really think Heinzman does an incredible job.
And you do notice the roller coaster scenes, especially, great example of it, where you can tell at times that it can be a little shaky. You can tell they're handheld, but those shots were gorgeous. And if you mess up a roller coaster shot, you're going to have to start the ride all the way back over and do it again. Excellent work all around on the cinematography. Not surprising.
Yeah. George, he did his own editing. Interesting experimental stuff. As the movie gets more chaotic, so do the cuts. There was an interesting speculative discussion in the commentary about his editing style stemming from his tools. George worked manually on a bench instead of the upright mechanical machines that would play it at speed. So they think that not having to actually pull the film through yourself makes you less likely to make cuts because you're just more relaxed, you're sitting back, you're not looking at it as intensely. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that it seems pretty demonstrative of that in the movie, just seeing how deliberately edited it is and how that speeds up as the pace of the movie picks up as well. Yeah, it definitely lends credence to that for me.
And it's wild. It's true guerrilla filmmaking, and you can see it. But yeah, it's so smoothly edited. It flows as one long narrative in a way where, if you were to tell me they just filmed it all sequentially in one day, I would believe it. It really feels like it.
As far as the Lutherans, it's pretty easy to imagine them being like, what the hell did we get into? And this seems to be the prevailing narrative when you read about this movie. And I get it. It's a very funny image to have this little group of Lutherans being like, we need a director for our new movie. Doesn't Jimmy Romero's nephew make movies in the area? And having no idea who George was. But they did approve Walton Cook's script. And Gornick said that while they didn't really have any edits because they didn't want to get into the muck with the film types, they were enthusiastic about the final product and successfully raised money with it for 2 or 3 years before it was shelved. So even though it wasn't put into theaters or anything, because as far as Romero and the Lutherans were concerned, it was just this PSA that would get filmed in community centers, but they were happy with what they got. They used it successfully as a fundraiser, and I think that it is doing Romero a little bit of a disservice to say that, they just didn't get it and then buried it. Because, yeah, it was sort of orphaned for a long time, put on a shelf. But that's almost as much his fault and not just being a self-promoter and not being that interested in this one than to just say, oh, the Lutherans didn't get it and buried it. So just an interesting thing that I saw going on online.
Yeah, and it did for them what they paid for it to do. They weren't looking for awards. They weren't looking to make money for it. Like you said, it was they paid for a single project.
Right.
And it's wild how much more successful it is at what it's doing than just being a PSA, while at the same time being a very effective PSA.
Definitely. And George didn't really regard it highly since it did have that work for hire element. But what makes this movie important as well as good, in my opinion, is its impact as a stepping stone for George. The money for this movie keeps them afloat long enough to get financing for the sports documentaries that he did, which then financed Martin, starring Lincoln Maisel, who we worked with first on this movie. And without Martin, he never attracts the attention of Dario Argento, who financed Dawn of the Dead and sent him off and running. So truly, without the amusement park and working with Lincoln Maisel, we do not have the Romero career that we got.
That's wild. Just wild. And for it to be so misunderstood or just not acknowledged is wild, because absolutely it's those connections that then blow him up on yes, Night of the Living Dead was big, but it didn't put money in his pockets, right? In fact, didn't put money in his pockets.
Literally
period.
No money.
So sad. It's so sad. Always consult your lawyer, folks. But it's that missing piece that connects his earlier stuff to the career that he ended up having, the monstrous career that he ended up having, and the impact he had on storytelling and on cinema.
And many, many years later, George's widow, Suzanne, attends a 50th anniversary event at Pitt honoring George's life, and she leverages the momentum of this festival to found the George A. Romero Foundation. She partners with Pitt to archive his work. One of the pieces was this movie, which they restore the heavily worn 16mm prints of and finally distribute after tracking down all the rights. And here we are today, finally able to watch this dang thing at our leisure. As you said, it is on Shudder. There is also a Blu-ray of it that I picked up. Pretty good, a few good special features on it. And yeah, commentary. So definitely, if people are interested in checking this out and they don't have Shudder already, I would recommend the Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah, just watch it on Shudder, I guess.
And given that this is the best horror movie of all time, I think people should be interested in checking it out.
Definitely.
I've already given out my Shudder password to enough people, so I can't share that. I'm sorry. But really do recommend checking this movie out.
I also do think it's wild how good the restoration looks, considering the condition of the prints. They talked about it a lot in the bonus features. The fact that they're using prints at all, the hierarchy of preference is negative, interpositive, internegative, and then finally at the bottom, least satisfactory, the print stock, because it's just not meant to be a preservation medium.
Yeah.
And they said that the colorists in this restoration effort really knocked it out of the park. And I think that must be the case, because I would never have guessed that this was in such shoddy condition. There is definitely some grain and some breakage, but in a way that lends it a little bit of texture. That's the kind of thing I like about these older movies.
And it felt like that was a choice, not a consequence. Mm-hmm. What I often look for when you're talking about like footage that was found or was not used and here it is now, coloration is a great example of just like it doesn't match, mm-hmm. or something looks off about it. They did a great job. It's consistent throughout. It looks like this is what the original cut was supposed to be.
Yeah. I also do find the timing of its re-release to be really interesting as well, because this came out right at the beginning of COVID, and you really saw ageism on the rise.
Yep.
A lot of people saying, well, if old people die from it, that's just the cost of business as usual.
Yeah, that was there was a Texas political official that said that exact thing when I was still living there, and it was like, you're horrible. What are you saying? They're happy to die for us.
And so for this to be as relevant as it was in 1975 is frankly absurd. It makes it feel so much more powerful for this to have been re-released and seen at large only just now, and for the message to still feel so impactful and relevant.
And not just the message, but the examples, the cited, like this is one type of how elders are abused in our society. Mm-hmm. And each one of them was something that is still going on today. Like it's still something even with my work, and we assist with these kinds of things with my work. And it's very much like the elderly are preyed upon. The elderly are taken advantage of, or they're ignored. And in the exact ways that are in this movie, and we'll get to the plot points, but there were a couple where I'm like, oh my God, people are still running these scams on people over 65. Like it's so gross. And it's gross that it's been almost 50 years and it's still the same stuff going on.
Yeah. So let's get into the plot now, actually. It starts with Lincoln approaching in this more documentary style. It's him, Lincoln Maisel, the actor. He says, "What's up? I'm Lincoln Maisel, the actor, and on my next birthday, I'll be 71. And like the rest of us, I get fulfillment from being active and contributing. The interactions with the rest of humanity that provide connection. Unfortunately," he continues, "many groups don't get this fulfillment for many reasons, including income level, location, or sadly, they're simply rejected due to old age." And he describes the irony that all of us look forward to retirement, the time when we finally get to enjoy our experience and earnings, only to find that we're no longer looked at as productive members of society, even worse for those without reputation or serious financial holdings, which compounds with the other issues of aging: loneliness, failing health, inadequate medical care or transportation, all symptoms of a lack of support from the youth. That will never happen to me, they say.
It really sets the table. I didn't know what to expect because I didn't know how much of a PSA it was going to be. And at the very top, it's a PSA. It truly is. But identifying those exact things, if you don't have wealth or power, was a great example. And you just cited another one that I deal with a lot, which is lack of transportation. And not doing anything about it. And it's just very real issues. Very, very everyday, almost mundane, except that these things should not be treated as mundane.
Absolutely. And I love how it sort of subverts this PSA aspect at the top, where he goes on, says the elderly are a wasted resource, but people can fix this by caring. Oh, you've heard the statistics, and you've been preached at about the problem. So we're not going to do that. You know, there's not going to be little Jimmy being like, wow, how many elderly people are shuttled away into like care facilities? Instead, the amusement park that you're about to visit will demonstrate the issues faced daily in a more hellishly empathetic way. There's this almost memento mori at the end of this, where he says, remember as you watch the film, one day you will be old.
Yep.
And it is just the most ominous threat of all time.
It is. And it absolutely smacks of like Twilight Zone, like giving you a reminder that it was you all along. Like, but like it's a very, because it's very much a thing in our society where like you don't think it's going to be you. And then it turns out it's everybody.
What?
Yep. They should have had little Jimmy, though.
They should have. He would have been good. It fades to the credits, really intense right away with the sounds of a pounding heart, a ticking clock, and the titular amusement park. And we see this beat-up man in a filthy white suit who waits panting in an all-white room. His doppelganger, much more put together, enters the room and greets him after a brief look of disgust. I really love this opening. Big Twin Peaks fan, personally.
Yes.
And this feels very Twin Peaksy, to have this like room removed from reality where doppelgangers interact.
Yep.
The beat up one croaks out a rejection of the new one's efforts to engage. There's nothing outside, he warns. Well, I'm going outside anyway. I'll see for myself if you don't mind, the prim version says after shaking his head. And he heads for the door he entered from. Now there is a crowd in the titular park. Nothing indeed, right? I mean, what the fuck does this guy know? There's a whole world of experience out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of writhing with life, and the flow of the crowd takes him to the ticket man. He's buying and selling, offering the folks in line a pittance for their prized possession. He goes full Pawn Stars. Best I can give you is $5. It's incredible.
He seems to just keep getting lower and lower. Like better items are coming. He's like, oh, that's beautiful. I'll give you $5.
Yeah. Oh, here's
I'll give you $1. Yeah. Oh man. And everyone's selling their possessions is old.
Yeah. When Lincoln gets to the front, he spends half his money on tickets. After all, he's on a budget. And we get our first glimpses of the social horror here. The high pressure, fast talk of the ticket guy is so stressful. And he's a little shocked when a woman spills her drink on him and she is rude as hell about it.
Yep.
The requirements for entrance to the park are an individual income over $3,500, not suffering from a list of pre-existing conditions, you must pay cash, and you must not fear the unknown. That one seems a little subjective.
But it does set the, like, absurdist tone right away. You're looking at the signs and like, oh, okay, that seems like a health concern. Wait, that? What? Huh? That doesn't...
$3,500 income. What does that have to do with it? Yeah, really great. Plenty of people are getting turned away, but Lincoln makes it in. He rides a roller coaster first. He's enjoying the climb and the view, and then he screams in terror at the plummet. And sure, that's how it normally works. But thanks to our classic Kuleshov effect, the images in sequence have additional thematic meaning, babe.
Oh, man.
This is my new character, cinephile Dennis Miller. Don't break the 180 rule, babe. But after exiting, he makes sure to offer some help to a woman who needs support to her wheelchair. She is traumatized by this roller coaster. And he goes on a train instead. And one of the other passengers, glimpsed only briefly, is a man in a mask who embodies death. And I love the surreality that these few images introduce. So many questions about what level of reality this possesses before we're whisked off. Again, the way that these flaws become benefits, where you're like, oh, that's a guy wearing a mask. Am I supposed to interact with this as though that's his face? Am I supposed to interact with it as though it's a guy wearing a mask? All of these questions that you have about just the way that things exist in this world and the barrier that you're interacting with, the barrier between the film and you. I just find it so incredible that it's leveraged into a positive when all of these things are just like, oh, we have no money. We have no money.
He does a wonderful, like, blink and you'll miss it with it too. Mm-hmm. And so there is a moment of just like, wait, did I just see what I thought I saw? It's never addressed that death was there on the train. No other character sees it. Our main character doesn't. It's just a quick moment and then on to the next plot point. But it does. It very much you have to watch this movie. You realize right away that this is a movie where the rules of the universe, the rules of life are not necessarily at play the way you expect them to be in this.
He then witnesses an older man struggle through an eye exam and get rejected for his driver's license for bumper cars.
This whole sequence was great.
Lincoln gets in. People are more or less driving normally, though. In fact, it's a big deal when the wife of the man who was rejected slams into a younger man's car with hers. Notable that he does a big show of indicating that he's going left and then swerving right, contributing to the accident. I was pretty pleased with myself that I spotted that this was George Romero himself. Very funny when he unfolds his giant-ass 6'5" self from that tiny-ass car.
Oh, I didn't realize that. That's fantastic.
Yeah. It was funny, too, because I was like, I think that's George Romero. And then in the commentary, the next time I watched it, they were like, oh, there's George himself. And I was like, yeah.
That's awesome.
The younger man is furious. He's getting really nasty. George himself is getting really nasty about how the only thing stupider than a woman driver is an old woman driver. Mm-hmm. And in fact, she shouldn't even be on the road at 67. And again, this sort of markers of discrimination, right? The intersectionality of being elderly and then compounding that with sexism that women face. I just think that it's blended into it really well. There's never a moment where he's like, and also people experience racism.
Yeah,
it's just part of it.
Nope, and it especially because this is an area where I work. This type of getting into legal issues, and despite you doing everything right and being on the side of right, if the other side is more charismatic, or if the law enforcement just for whatever biased reason doesn't believe you, it doesn't matter what the truth is.
Yeah. And they're quickly joined by a hapless police officer and the insurance man who warns them that their rates are going to increase from this. Yep. We can barely afford it now, they protest.
Yep. Again, just echoing like the modern day. It's just a problem that still is exactly the same.
Yep. And Lincoln's testimony is called into question because he wasn't wearing the glasses that his license says he needs, and the at-fault driver pounces on this like a damn puma.
Calls him a blind man.
That's right.
I'd also point out, legally speaking, if he had an attorney, the glasses you need to wear for driving have no bearing on whether or not you can see something when you're not driving. So
wow.
I would fight that point. This is just police bias and white man bias and just unbelievable.
Romero, you're canceled. Romero in the movie, not Romero the filmmaker.
Yeah. But Romero the filmmaker. This is an excellent point.
Lincoln himself also seems shaken by this. He seems to almost question himself and sadly wander off. Although he does perk up at the sight of a refreshment sign, which is very relatable.
There's a lot of times in this movie, though, where like they should be playing the Charlie Brown Christmas music. He's just like walking away with his head hung low.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I feel so bad.
He's got big Charlie Brown energy.
He does. He really does.
Once he's at this refreshment stand, he's treated shabbily as the staff fawns over a wealthy man wearing a pinstripe suit, smoking a comically large cigar. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it literally looks like a prop, as does the waiter's pencil and other elements. Again, very surreal in its silent dialogue. I would describe this as farcically aristocratic.
I like that. It was one of the first scenes where I felt like there was almost a study of mime in this. Like mm-hmm. They work with big props and they act in big movements, and it's very much like a stage production. Mm-hmm. Another comical scene in regards to its presentation, but not in regards to its substance.
Yeah. And that guy gets a lobster while Lincoln gets a plate of fries and beans?
Yeah,
some sort of goulash?
Yeah, it's undefined and didn't look the most delicious.
Whatever it is, we'll call it more rustic. And even this is more than the gaggle of hungry people watching and shaking their head are receiving. Again, a bunch of people of color in this area, people dressed more shabbily than even Lincoln is, who's wearing a nice suit. Definitely, I think, representative of sort of the exclusion of certain groups of people, even within this already marginalized group.
Very much so. Very much. I mean, we're only what, 10 years after Civil Rights Act? Like, mm-hmm. He's very much pointing out that this is not just an elderly issue, but it is absolutely on racial lines too, that you're going to be denied service. And maybe they won't deny you service, but you're not going to get the service that everybody else is getting.
Right. And the wealthy man's view is spoiled by looking at Lincoln and the rabble. So he has the staff turn not just his table around, but lift him in the chair and move him as well.
It was so good. It was so good.
Lincoln invites the hungry onlookers to share his meal, and it quickly becomes chaos. They're all scooping up the meal goo, and the staff tries to eject them, and Lincoln scarpers off. He's like, I'm getting the fuck out of here.
Yeah, it was and they're using white bread, which is just, notoriously that's my people's bread. That's the rich people eat bread that has color to it, but no, if you're eating white bread, that's the
enriched flour.
Yeah, but it just like it was a visceral scene of them. It almost reminded me of a scene from Day of the Dead where they're using it to scoop and like they start using their bare hands to grab like scoops of beans or goop, and just upsetting.
Yeah. He trades some tickets for some bags of groceries, like he's exchanging them for a prize, basically. And it is tough to carry all three by himself, and everyone around him just ignores his request for help, so he winds up just taking a box of crackers and a jar of peanut butter with him, the bare minimum for sustenance. The rest of these bags of groceries left just scattered on the thing there, because he literally cannot carry them by himself.
Yeah. Yep.
He is, though, having a grand old time chowing down on them. And he calls a bunch of kids over to talk with them, and an adult emerges to immediately call him a prevert. I'll give you about 2 seconds to get out of here.
It was so upsetting. It was so upsetting. He did nothing wrong.
Well, he staggers away scared because he does not trust this Pittsburghian.
Yeah.
In this moment, he sees a glimpse of the Grim Reaper riding the carousel, and rats quickly descend on his leftovers. So, yeah, the darkness on the fringe is sort of coming into his view as well. He's starting to get stressed as hell. He makes the climb to Boot Hill, where a sign says senior citizens preferred. For people who don't know, this is the name that a lot of cemeteries bear, especially in the West, where a lot of cowboys died, quote, with their boots on, aka in gunfights or by hanging. And this is no exception. A giant cow skull adorns the front, along with some graves, and a large group of younger ushers hurry in the crowds of the elderly. You'll enjoy it, they say, as they shove him in.
Yeah, and then they do. They have a really good time inside.
That's right. That's right. It's a nursing home where the elderly are trying to regain some mobility and fight against their body's decay. A true delight.
Oh, man. I did like that it was kind of old-timey workout equipment, too.
Yeah. Yeah, it is freaky. And he freaks out. The people in front try to stop him from fleeing, protesting that he's supposed to have fun in there, which doesn't look like it.
No.
They also now count a young man in a doctor's lab coat amongst their numbers, which I thought was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
In the kerfuffle, his glasses slip from his jacket pocket and are crushed underfoot. He can still see some, though, and spots the couple from the bumper cars now relegated to the pony ride. Inexpensive public transportation, a sign declares them. No license required. That's what I take in Philly. I take the pony ride.
I would. And the woman is guiding the horse, and she seems like she's having a good time too. And the horse looked very happy all around. Look, there's not subtlety in the messaging, but it is effective messaging, and the ways in which society will deny them things and then try to give them other things and pretend that these are great and it's equal and it's this is you, or just that idea of forcing the elderly into this place because they're supposed to enjoy it. Like, it's, again, not subtle, but it's really powerful. It's really powerful, and it's one of the more upsetting scenes in the movie.
Also, there is an element of, even in these aspects where they are providing for different groups, there are times where there is sort of forced integration, right? Or you're left behind, because on the Philadelphia pony ride, they just stopped taking tokens, and now you have to use the card, the key card, which involves having internet and setting up an account and putting funding on it. And all of these are things that are a lot more difficult for some of the elderly among us, especially those without a lot of money, as opposed to having tokens that you can drop into the bucket.
Yep. And another modern example is a lot of restaurants making a move to go cashless and only accept cards.
Right.
And it's a similar thing where, like, you're excluding people without the means. You're excluding people who can't afford that or don't have access to that, and they're just not allowed in your restaurant now.
Right.
It's wild. It's just another one of those. It's wild how accurate this is on issues that were relevant 50 years ago and are still the exact same issues.
I also just want to use this as an opportunity to say that George Romero in particular has always had really an impressive hold on progressive politics.
100%. 100%.
Really, I just want to shout him out as being way ahead of the rest of his ilk. You know?
Dude, I will say this, and you know, Day of the Dead might be my favorite of the Dead movies.
It's mine for sure.
It's a thing where you watch it thinking it's going to be a zombie flick, and it is, but that movie is way more social commentary.
Mm-hmm.
And progressive social commentary about authoritarian regimes, about capitalism in America. Like, he's decades ahead of everybody else. And you see it here too. You really do.
I rewatched The Crazies last night, and it's just fucking incredible how angry it is about just where the government is at and everything.
I haven't seen it in years. Oh, man.
Again, very, very relevant in terms of seeing the government's handling of COVID and the way that they tried to do things too late, and then once they made mistakes, being unable to admit those mistakes and just clamping down on them, doubling down. Just really, really powerful, potent anger in that movie. Highly recommend people check it out. Again, if they haven't seen it recently, go back and check out The Crazies. Really, really fucking good.
They did a remake of that.
Haven't seen it yet. I actually have it ready to go tonight.
Are you serious?
I think I'm gonna watch it tonight.
You got your juices flowing from watching.
So. I'm all crazied up, baby.
Yep. Crazies is absolutely amazing. I need to rewatch that, but I enjoyed the remake as well.
Also, very Pittsburgh energy in the Crazies.
Does Romero have connections to Pittsburgh? Because
no, just kidding. Yeah, he's deeply entrenched there.
I was like, because the mall from Day of the Dead is also outside of Pittsburgh, isn't it?
That's right, Monroeville. And in fact, Romero, one of his first big breakout directorial things that he got to do himself was directing for Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Oh my God, seriously?
Yep, that's right.
God, he was amazing.
Yeah, Mr. Rogers was one of his biggest early proponents.
Apparently, Fred Rogers was also a progressive, brilliant, wonderful man, so.
Shouts out. Two young lovers rush into the fortune teller's tent. We want to see what our life is going to be like.
This sequence, another wild one, because in addition to you getting the vision of their future, you also simultaneously get cuts of like weirdly flowing, watching the fortune teller who is like kind of mugging at the camera / at our main character. And you also get repeated shots of the couple watching this vision and just lovingly like stroking each other's hands, like as they're watching it. Like it's so disturbing and absurd. And like you sit there thinking, are they not receiving the message that's coming through right now?
I took it more as like they're fucking terrified and trying to comfort each other.
Oh, I like that. I like that, Reed. I like that.
Well, it is very fucked up what they're seeing here.
And without getting too into it, this is another thing that it's already been hinted at and scratched at, but the ways that medical professionals also, they are abandoning these people who at the time in their lives when they need them the most.
Exactly. As I mentioned, the boy in this is Michael Gornick himself, the second camera guy, and he worked in the dubbing booth. But they get exactly this. They see themselves still together, yes, but living in a slum house whose landlord tells the news, I can't afford to make improvements and nobody will buy it. Plus the people inside just don't take care of themselves or their home. Of course, everybody except him is at fault.
Naturally.
The woman runs to the phone booth on the corner to call the doctor. My husband is in such bad shape. He can't talk. He can't take his meds. He doesn't even recognize me. And from the middle of a packed office, he hangs up after a, sorry, I'm too busy.
Yep.
Lincoln flees this depressing sight too, and he sits on a bench outside. The elderly woman who's there looks at him disgusted and shuffles off. And it does feel like even being rejected by your peers who go, well, I'm not old. Why would I hang out with this guy?
Yeah.
The couple inside, however, aren't allowed to leave, though, and they witness the end of the vision. Their shared disorientation and repeated futile loop of attempts to get help, using their last dime to try and do so. Really awesome moment when they do finally make it out, and the sign outside has changed from See the Future and the Sun Tarot card to You Have Seen the Future and the Death Tarot card.
I missed that!
Yeah, dog.
Oh, that's awesome!
Mm-hmm.
Let's... Well, there was the actor who plays the elderly wife is like desperate, desperately begging, and she spent her last dime. I mean, we're talking about like Mickey Mouse slicing the bean to make sure everybody can have a little bit. Like this is desperation and poverty, and that like just a society that in general does not care and just walks past, and all she needs is literally a dime, which back in the day, that was probably worth about, $1 million, I'm guessing, in 1975.
Sure. I think that math checks out. So it's really less of a surprise that nobody was giving her the dime that she needed. The man rejects his partner's comforting hand, and he in fact attacks Lincoln upon seeing him. And there is very much this sort of fear of the self, right? An attempt to destroy that which you will become, and in that way prevent it from occurring. He truly just like lashes out at him in a major way.
I love that. I think I kind of struggled to give meaning to the man punching him, but I think you're absolutely right. Like he's seeing his own future, one where he thought he would have happiness with the love of his life. striking out at oh god, but it's that, but as the sign says, like, you've seen your future, right? This is, it's inevitable, and even if you're going to be angry about it, that's not going to stop it happening.
One day you will be old, as Lincoln said at the beginning.
He sure did.
The crowd continues to ignore and mill around Lincoln as he struggles to rise from the ground, and when he does, suddenly everyone has vanished. A clock chimes, and the camera is disorientingly close, and the silence roars as much as the crowd did. And Lincoln, craning his neck, spots the same Grim Reaper-looking fellow than a trio of bikers. Oh no, punks!
The best characters in the movie. The stop motion of them moving towards him, like I shouldn't even say stop motion. The hard cuts of them progressing towards him, and every time all three of them pose a little bit differently, but every time very ominously and very threateningly. It was so good.
Yeah, I love it. Definitely feels like a dry run for Dawn of the Dead as they circle him on these bikes.
Yes.
And then they mug him for his tickets outside Davy Jones's locker. Really fun, knocks you off balance when they, get closer to him thanks to the magic of editing. Suddenly they're there with brass knuckles and chains and pipes. And once they leave him, and now that he doesn't need immediate help, suddenly the crowd is back and stepping over him.
It's so sad. It's
Big
so
head
sad.
shake for those at home. Big head shake.
It's so sad. This would never happen in real life, right?
No. He screams, "Help me," but no voice comes out. And when he finally manages to stumble to his feet and get past a very scary clown, he makes his way to the first aid tent, greeted by the same ticket guy again, and says, "I have insurance." "That's so much paperwork. Can't you pay cash?" the ticket taker asks.
Oh, man. But he's on a fixed budget.
That's right. Lincoln does pay cash, though, and he heads in, looking past the wheelchairs, and he grabs a walker instead, but then rejects that, too. He shoves it away. "No, I don't need this.
I don't need the help. I'm not old." Yep.
And he gets in line for examination, and the doctors are prescribing everyone the same treatment of bandage. "I need more than a bandage," Lincoln protests, but they completely ignore him and slap a bandage on his head.
I wish there was some sort of saying that meant like trying to fix a problem, but really only doing like a superficial fix for it.
Damn, if only you could put some kind of Band-Aid on not knowing that phrase.
Oh, it's so great, though. And I think this is the moment where you start to realize, wait a minute, the guy at the beginning had a bandage right there.
What the heck?
Mm-hmm.
He pleads for a doctor, but the nurse at the end of the line is pissed that he doesn't have his forms filled out. "We need our forms. And besides, you should be feeling a lot better. They put a Band-Aid on you."
Yeah. That'll fix it.
She gives him a cane, and he stumbles his way back out, spots two men making opposite pitches, while a pickpocket has his way with the crowd. The first, a slower man, warns them that a home is just like a body. It gets old, weak, and tired. He and his father put in the difficult work to rebuild their homes with his family business, like a new roof for $2,000. The other, a fast-talking huckster with a cowboy hat, sells no-fuss retirement homes, and as low as $2,000, just $2,000 down. That's right, folks, step right up. It's in a lovely climate, and you never have to worry about making repairs.
My favorite part of the pitch is, and you can get your own appraisal, and then we'll take a look at your appraisal, and if we agree with it, then we'll pay you that. This is reverse mortgages. This was one of the scenes that upset me the most, because like both of these two guys are selling things that people today are still selling to people who they think are vulnerable and easily manipulated. It's just disgusting.
Definitely. I mean, at least the guy who's trying to keep them, like, repair the houses, like, he might be overcharging or whatever, but at least they're staying in their own home. Like, my mom ran a geriatric care management company, and her focus was always on keeping people in their own homes for as long as possible. And there is something about, like, the appeal of a quick fix, right? You say, "Oh, I would love to never have to worry about home maintenance." Home maintenance sucks, it turns out.
Yep.
And then, for them to be undercutting it, right? To say that for the same amount as you can repair the roof, we could get you locked in on this on this other place, and then we get your house to sell.
Yeah.
Like, it just is very upsetting in terms of like the way that they get people out of their homes to then just have more inventory for real estate companies.
100%. And, all landlords are bastards, but also it is part of the genius of this movie is like his laser pinpoint accuracy on the actual things that are going on.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not trying to like bring it back to my work all the time, but a lot of the work that we do, we're helping people who are trying to get a guardianship over their older relative, their mother, their father, who can't take care of themselves and who can't make financial decisions anymore. And these are the people that create a need for us to have guardians, because they're out there trying to prey on people who don't know any better and hear something like this and say, wow, that's amazing. That would solve a lot of problems. Hey, what a great idea. I'm in.
Yeah.
It's just, I think this was one of those most depressing parts of the movie for me.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And the pickpocket tricks Lincoln with a few simple, kind words, ironically warning him about watching out for the fast talkers and snatching a rosary right out the front pocket, then dipping. It's seconds. It's honestly wild to see in action. And then, of course, another ironic layer that he stole this religious object from him.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure he'll find sanctuary.
Sure. Lincoln realizes he's been robbed once again, and so he wanders off. He makes his way to the freak show, and of course, the freaks are just elderly people, each met with jeers by the crowd. One is even in a soldier's uniform with a comical amount of medals on it.
Yes.
And they're boo, boo.
Yep. One couple are in bathing suits. And it's just, yeah. It is the body shaming just because you're old. Like, it's so brutal.
And he gets up to leave in disgust. And one guy in the crowd goes, hey, that freak is getting away.
Yeah. Okay, his getaway is amazing, though, because he finds an amazing hiding spot.
Yeah, he slides off to the side, gives him the slip. They do all chase him, screaming, get the freak. It is funny in an absurd way, but also you're like, wow, yeah, like, this is fucked. He gives him the slip. He heads for Sanctuary, which is this little churchy gazebo with two priests, a Star of David, and a sign that says positively no trucks. What religion do you think that's from?
I didn't even think about, that's a good point. When you think about religions, it's the no truckers that really they get the worst of it. They're the most oppressed of all the religious groups.
I think it's a Jehovah's Witness thing. No birthdays, no blood transfusions, no trucks.
No trucks. Oh man.
Just as he arrives though, they close. Sorry,
what?
Charlie.
You can't close Sanctuary?
Turns out you can. They keep very regular hours.
Oh, no.
More death imagery looms. He stops at a bench with a gaggle of children, but suddenly he and the few elderly people on it are left alone as the parade of pirates, a vivacious bunch, no doubt, sweep by, and the parents emerge from behind them to claim these kids and vanish. Definitely feels like parents picking up Sonny Jim from grandma's after work, or even worse, leaving them to fester in a facility. You can kind of feel the abandonment in their suddenness of the departure.
100%
of the departure.
Now, can I ask you a difficult question?
Mm-hmm.
Having just watched Twin Peaks: The Return, is that where you're going from, Sonny Jim? Is that where you're pulling that from? Because I've decided I want to start using that in my my vernacular as well.
I didn't consciously do that, but we were talking about Twin Peaks earlier. It's very possible that just sort of manifested itself that way.
The Return was so good, just as an aside. It was so good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Friggin' Hawk, amazing in it again.
God, Hawk is so good.
What's that guy's name? Michael Ironhorse, right? Is that?
I believe you're right.
Michael Horse? Is it Michael? I gotta look it up because I know there's Michael Ironside. I think Michael Horse.
It's a real bummer.
It is Michael Horse.
How many of the actors from that have since passed, and that was only 6-7 years ago that they made it. Like, yeah, it's so sad. But what a work of art. Sorry, it's just
and glad they at least got to be in it. One more time, right?
Log Lady got to be in it.
Tragic.
Yeah, And I will say and this is relevant. The path to us watching that was that Claire had never seen the original Twin Peaks, and I was making her enjoy Alan Wake, which is an amazing, amazing game and has a lot of Twin Peaks influence.
Definitely.
And she was like, well, I've never seen Twin Peaks. So we watched Twin Peaks and then immediately had to watch The Return because I'd never seen it. It was amazing.
So
yeah.
Good. So
yep.
Good.
Yep.
Uncle Dave, you did it again, baby. As Lincoln stumbles off again, a couple of kids bump him hard, and they check him into the stone wall next to the mocking wombat mini golf hole. Damn you, mocking wombat!
Where was the rest of that mini golf course, though?
That's it. It's just the one.
They said the one hole in the middle of a sidewalk.
Lincoln can't believe this disrespect. It was one thing from the actual adults, but now kids too?
Well, hopefully there's a kid that'll change his mind.
Hopefully. The loneliness from the scene of them being left on the bench is reinforced more directly for him now. He's beckoned over by this little girl at a picnic who wants him to read The Three Little Pigs. She does give him some chicken. That'll only feed him for a day, kid. You really want to help, you got to teach this man to chicken.
Yes, 100%.
But soon Mom is packing up the picnic, unconcerned with his needs, and he's trying to speed through the book, squeeze every drop of connection out of this exchange before the one person who was actually pleasant, who fed him and offered a spot of comfort and rest, is pulled away, and he starts to just weep there on the hill. Truly, he looks like a child.
It was one of the most upsetting scenes because they really tease you with the, oh, look, he got chicken, and the little girl really wanted him to read the book. And it was sweet and endearing, and he actually did really good voices and did a great job with the book.
He did say chimney chin chin.
I didn't like that he said chimney. That one bothered me. And he did it twice.
Yep.
Because as she's pulling the book away, he's doing the chimney again. They also skipped the straw part entirely in the editing, and that's the only flaw in the movie.
He's really trying to, he's getting ahead. He's like, fuck the straw pig.
It was fuck that straw pig. It was of all of them, I think was maybe the best little vignette. I think it was one of the most upsetting. And also that little girl deserves an Oscar for being the cutest. She was so cute. Won't you like some chicken? I already ate mine. Like, she was so freaking cute. I loved her.
Yeah, she was great. He is dejected as he walks away from this scene, and he enters a door. Sweet music belies the ominous fact that it is the White Room from before, and he looks just like the man that he greeted at the beginning.
Oh no, Lincoln's in the White Lodge.
Oh no. He sits down, and there's a sting as the door opens once again, and a new, clean-suited and put-together Lincoln has just entered. And the opening scene repeats, now with our perspective aligned with the beat-up version instead of the prim version. And his warnings repeat and mean that much more. There's nothing out there. But like the merry-go-round and the fortune-teller's prediction, the loop persists, and he fails to stop him, weakly repeating, there's nothing out there, as it fades to black.
So the message is aliens had him in a time loop, right?
Sure. Yeah, that sounds right to me.
Okay, good.
Lincoln greets us outside the movie now, again for an outro. In anticipation of that day, consider that the old man is you, separated only by the passage of time. Take steps now. Be a positive influence. Help old people, because one day you'll need it too. I'll see you in the park. Someday, he says as he walks off in a great long shot as the credits roll and a storm picks up.
And then it's like...
I really love this closing line. I think it really urges you to take the social horror into yourself as psychological horror as well. And perfectly blends those two together in a way that makes it very real instead of just fantastical allegory.
I know you're going to ask me, and I'm going to try to reserve it for when you ask me, but this is one of those things that makes the movie so great, in my opinion. I joke about it being Twilight Zone-esque, but I think it deliberately is, too. It is very much asking you to consider this. If you can't consider it outwardly to the community that you're a part of, then consider it inwardly, where this will be you one day. And I think it's huge. I think it's absolutely huge.
Definitely. And now, JP, as you alluded to,
yes,
we have reached the part of the episode.
Oh boy,
where we sum up why this isn't just a good horror movie, but is in fact the best horror movie ever made. And I'm gonna let you start.
George, I really appreciate that, and I know that you picked this movie, but honestly, had I seen it or been aware of it, I might have picked it too. There's a couple of things that we've talked about a lot, and it's a short movie. And honestly, let's put that in the positive category. Sure. It's a 53-minute movie. You are not committing your life to this movie. You can watch it over your lunch break. It's a worthwhile watch. The reason that this is the best movie is because there are unstated things. And it's funny that I'm using that phrase because I think that there's a big part of this where the dialogue from a lot of the characters is missed due to the crowd sounds or the actions going on. Our main character really has no voice. And not just like he has no authority and power, but has no voice at times. Even when you can see that he's speaking, you can barely make out what he's saying.
Right. It's
a heavy-handed metaphor, but it is such an accurate and striking and powerful metaphor. And I try to do progressive, community-based social work, not just in my beliefs, but in my actual work that I do. And this being a PSA is both, it creates a weird framework for it, and also kind of an awesome middle finger where they're like, yeah, give us an after school special. And he's like, oh, I've got you. And
a finger on the monkey's paw curl.
Yeah, yes. It's wild. It's wild what, like, they were like, okay, do a book report on this thing. And he's like, I'm going to create a masterpiece and you're just going to have to accept it. And it does exactly what it's trying to do, and does it both heavy-handedly and subtly in other ways. I love that. And I love that it is a really progressive message. There is a creeping fear in this movie. And as I started watching it, I'm like, how the hell is this a horror movie? And by the end of it, I'm like, that was a horrific presentation of a very real thing. And that's scary. And ultimately, Romero is just saying we need to take care of everyone. And here's a group that we don't take care of. And we're all guilty of it. And we all need to do better with it. And yet it's simultaneously not just a heavy-handed pounding home of like the how tough it is to be old. Like, It's a real narrative and it's a real story, and it's told in such an interesting avant-garde, postmodern way. It echoes of Argento. It echoes of kind of things that were going on in other types of film in the 60s and 70s that were way more art house than they were popcorn. And it's just kind of brilliant. And then the thing where it was lost and missing and finally is here for us, it's beautiful to be able to see the realization of this complicated and weird work. And that now that we have his body of work, we can see how it fits in instead of it feeling like it was a work to hire. Like, it's way more than that. It's way more than that. And he went above and beyond on this assignment. I think of like after school specials that I watched as a kid that actually had an impact on me. There's a great one that's got, oh my God, his name's escaping me. That's the guy from Moon. And from
Sam Rockwell?
Yes, Sam Rockwell. There's a great Sam Rockwell one where he kills someone in a drunk driving accident, and the judge orders him to send a check for $1 every single day to the family for the next 10 years. And he agonizes and he's just so broken because every single day he has to relive what he did. And that was a really impactful, like, after school special. It really, really made me think about the consequences of actions. I wish I'd seen this as a kid. I wish this was out there so people could really understand, like, this is a very real thing, and it's dark and it's sad. Romero's a genius. This is just one more genius thing that he made, and it's different. And it's not what you're expecting, but it's something that if you just kind of sit back and let it feel what it's going for and just experiencing it and not trying to make judgments until it's over, I think anyone is going to find that this is a really brilliant movie. Really brilliant. And that's why it's the best horror movie of all time.
I totally agree. To me, this is the best horror movie ever made, and I really want to latch on to one of the words that you used there, which is complicated. And I think that this is a very complicated subject, because for a quick flip on the other side here, I think it is very easy, as a fellow kid myself, to have the social dynamic of feeling bitter. Like we're left holding the bag, right? Like the people who came before us have fucked up the planet so badly, and then they get to say, well, we're not going to be here for that long, so peace out. Enjoy what we left for you. But I think that is part of what makes this such a good and important work, is that it is an experiment in extreme empathy. You have to really look at them as a person, each individual person, and not just the generational divide that separates us. It can't let you dehumanize them in a way that you sort of punish them even subconsciously. And I saw a really interesting turn of phrase, which was that loneliness is the other side of longevity. And that it's not just physical pain that comes with aging, it's emotional pain. It's feeling disposable and isolated. And then on top of that, I think aging with dignity in a capitalistic space is especially hard, because we are taught to value our usefulness to the market, and the productivity tables leave the elderly on the fringe, then compound that with the loss of autonomy, again, directly in contrast to the individualism prized by capitalism. And so Georgie took all these little humiliations that come with aging in America, manifested them perfectly as a chaotic crowd in a theme park from hell. But the kind of hell that is about indignities that pile up, as opposed to just, hey, fire sucks, huh? And that is way scarier to me, especially as someone who already lives alone. You know, like the idea of something happening and losing some of that individuality that I prize, that I enjoy living alone. And if something happens and I lose that mobility and I can't get up the stairs or something, you know, that is scary. That's really fucking scary. Yeah. And I think that when Romero asks you to look at what life is like in our society for our aging citizens and sort of how dismissed they have been, it almost makes you understand a little more why boomers lash out in the way that they do. Right? That,
well, let's not go that for now.
I do think that it's a scary world out there. And it's a world that is leaving people behind. And it seems to only be in more and more of a rush to do that. And so, yeah, I think, it is just a very scary thing to put yourself in those shoes. And I think that is what George really does incredibly well here. And without this, his career might have ended because the crazies flopped. And if he didn't have the money to keep the company going, who knows what would have happened? We might have only gotten Night of the Living Dead from him, basically.
What a horrible, horrible fate that would have been.
Truly. And the fact that this is unique within his filmography and yet embodies so much of it, I think is remarkable on its own merits as well. It's incredibly well done. I think the cinematography, like I said, is really fucking awesome. Shouts out to Bill Heinzman. Really love that. It's the best horror movie ever made.
George, that was really beautifully said. I think that's my favorite thing about this movie is instead of, mocking what was different about it than other movies, it's a movie that made both of us think. And it's powerful in that. And you really, I think you've stated some really beautiful lessons learned and criticisms of society. So sincerely, thank you for having me watch this movie and for talking to me about it. I think this is one that I'm going to share and also covet. I think this is a movie that, like, it's not for everybody. And frankly, if you're not getting the good things out of this, you need to kind of rethink what you're really watching movies for, because this is really powerful movie.
I totally agree. I love it. I hope that, of course, it fucking sucks. Maybe this will go out at some point anyway, because this is technically the Patreon episode. It's sad to me that this will only see a much smaller audience than it might have, because I do want people to watch this movie. I think that it is worthwhile and really something unique and special. So yeah, I mean, hey, at the very least, everyone who is within the sound of my voice, go watch it and then go tell people about it. And yeah, just I hope people do check it out.
Yeah.
Shouts out George Romero, one of America's best, in my opinion.
Same. Just absolutely amazing, and a gift that he left us so many wonderful things, and this is one of them.
Definitely. JP, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, my friend. Please tell the people what you got going on. If you want to plug anything, shouts out to We Heard About Pluto.
It's funny. I am going to shout out to We Heard About Pluto. We are booking the reunion. They're not even the reunion, the reboot. As we get the show back on its track. I, like you, have recently just kind of excised myself from the social media formerly known as Twitter. So you can just yell out your window and say, "Hey, JP," and I'll come a running because I ain't got shit going on.
I'll say, if you're listening to this, you have access to the Discord, so come talk to me in the Discord. Lots of fun people hanging out in there, lots of good movie watchers. So come talk to us about movies and also all kinds of other stuff.
I got to get in on that Discord. It seems like I'd love to talk to people about these kinds of things.
Yeah, and it's funny because this is actually the only place you can talk about movies on the internet.
It's wild. You'd think they'd have some kind of database where you could on the internet.
We locked it down. I'm afraid we've really
good for you.
And we are litigious about protecting our.
Do not forget to copyright it properly.
All right, yeah. As far as my plugs, not a lot going on. We hit the 100K, so thanks to everyone for that.
Amazing.
The stream went well, so I have the video. I think it will probably get chopped up in some fashion and maybe put out somewhere. I don't know. I don't know exactly what's happening with it. But if you missed it, it's possible that you'll still get at least some of it. So look forward to that. That's pretty much it. I guess we have some cool guests already lined up for January. It's one of the things that's tough is because even though I cut back on the amount of episodes, which is good for the amount of work that I have to do, it also makes scheduling much harder because I'm like, 2 episodes and I'm already like looking at next month. So yeah, so I have some cool Lonnie Nadler and Galen Howard are coming up in January. Galen Howard, the actor. Lonnie Nadler, you might know from the writing half of The Sickness, who his wife was just on to promote. Jenna Cha, we talked about Night of the Hunter. He's coming on to talk about a Bergman movie, so a big brain couple happening over there. So I'm looking forward to that. Galen and I are talking about, what was the movie? I just had it written. Miracle Mile, which I have not seen yet, but I believe is about like a nuclear attack in LA. So
oh wow. Okay, that sounds awesome.
Does sound cool. So I'm looking forward to checking that out. Have it coming in the mail. So look forward to those episodes coming out in January. That's it, dog. Yell at me on Discord. Oh, Instagram. Smooches. I'm on Instagram too. Get another smooches in there because I'm on Instagram and also Letterboxd are probably the 2 places you can.
And LinkedIn. Check out George on LinkedIn.
Please don't check me out on LinkedIn. All right, now you can do the smooches.
Smooches.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.